Alliance for Change, September 20th, 2024. I have to my immediate left, chairperson of the Alliance for Change, Member of Parliament David Patterson, and to my immediate right, the leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes. Joining us online via Zoom is a councillor from Region 8, Mr. Daniel Fraser. During the course of the press conference, we are expected to be joined by Ms. Laura George. We are awaiting her arrival. To start off, we will have a statement by Mr. Fraser, after which I will make a statement. Hopefully by then Ms. George is with us, who will address matters that the party encountered during a recent visit to Region 9. And then that will be followed by Mr. Hughes, who will also speak on conditions in Region 9. Mr. Fraser, can we have your statement, please? Mr. Fraser, Mr. Daniel Fraser. Okay, so while our team tried to make contact with Mr. Fraser and ensure that we can receive his audio very clearly, let me address the matter of the Ghana Elections Commission. And to tell you that as the Alliance for Change look more into preparations for the next regional and general elections, we are becoming more and more concerned over the lack of effort to fix weaknesses in the electoral system. The party has received reports that visits to verify the address of an elector is not always being done. These reports are coming mainly from hinterland communities. And while the party would acknowledge that residency is not a requirement to be on the voters list, the present system does present opportunity for voter manipulation. Based on the Election Laws Amendment Act 2000, the Elections Commission had adopted a procedure where visits were made to the address given by an elector to verify that indeed the elector was a resident of the electoral district. This process is no longer being carried out in many districts. Whether it is the cost of the returning officer making such a visit or a change in its operations, GCOM has not made any public pronouncement on the matter. This opens the door for voter manipulation, as I've said, of the list of electors. For example, let us take a look at the 2020 election results for Region 8. The difference between the two main parties, the PPP and the APNU AFC coalition, was less than 100 votes. Now bear in mind, in Region 8, under our hybrid system of first past the post and geographical representation, it provides one seat in the National Assembly to the party that gets the most votes, regional votes. If the party arranged the transfer of 100 persons from Region 6, for example, to Region 8, then it is likely for that party to win the regional seat. Then that one seat would give the party control of the House, control of the National Assembly, through the manipulation of the list. For Region number 8, the residents there, they would have a regional council elected by persons who do not live in that district and have no interest in what goes on there. The same would happen in the township of Madio at local government elections. The AFC has made repeated calls for the Elections Commission to make recommendations to improve our electoral system. These calls have fallen on deaf ears. The party has also written asking for a meeting to address our concerns. We've had no reply. We're still hoping that the Elections Commission can carve out some time from whatever it is that's keeping them so busy so that we can sit down and we can discuss all these matters that are of concern not only to the Alliance for Change, but to the people of Guyana. In this day and age, why is the Elections Commission still holding on to a system of paper verification of an elector? Why is technology not being employed, as in the form of biometric identification? The present list of electors is close to the full population of Guyana. And outside of having the census that was due over a year ago, we have to use the figures of the last census. So how can that list really be an accurate list of eligible electors? Clearly, GCOM is failing in its duty to prepare for credible elections. Elections must not only be free and fair, but it must also be credible. There is also the matter of citizens of Commonwealth nations who may be considered domiciled in Guyana. With the influx of foreign workers in the oil sector, should they be eligible for inclusion on the OLE? At present, the laws provide for that. But should they really be electing the government of Guyana? This matter is engaged in the attention of the Alliance for Change, and we will be speaking more on this at another time. Let me also remind you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and those viewing there, that over a year ago, we wrote GCOM, providing the names of persons to be extracted from the list to fill vacant seats within the regional councils for Region 2, Region 7, and Region 4. GCOM has not answered us. They have not replied. They have not let us know the way forward. So we're still waiting on that. At this present time, the Alliance for Change is not satisfied with preparations for the next elections. There are too many weaknesses in the system. GCOM has not made public any recommendation on how these weaknesses are being addressed. Any post-elections unrest would be the result of GCOM's failure. It is time for the chairperson to bother herself and say what needs to be done to ensure a credible electoral process. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope Mr. Fraser can come in now.
Yes, I'm ready.
Please go ahead, Mr. Daniel Fraser, councillor from region number 8. That is not Mr. Fraser. We hope that we'll be able to bring up a photograph of Mr. Fraser almost immediately. In the meantime, go ahead with your statement, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. The Alliance for Change is concerned that decisions of the Mayor and Common Council of Mali are deliberately being delayed, disobeyed, and even disregarded under and through instructions from partisan political players. Earlier this month, on the 7th of September to be exact, ministers of the PPP administration visited the municipality headed by the Vice President. The PPP team was there disbursing household grants to the residents of the municipality and surrounding villages. There are two Amerindian villages that neighbors the municipality. That is Campbelltown with 2 satellite communities, and Princeville. That's Princeville and Morrow, and Maikobi, another Amerindian village at the lower Potaro River. These 3 local government structures established under the laws of Guyana are geared under the respective laws to be able to be self-governed by a council. In the case of the municipality, of which these concerns are about, there is no executive powers ascribed, implied, or mentioned in any part of the laws of our land given to the mayor. In fact, the duties and functions of the mayor, as is documented in the relevant Act Chapter 2801, has made it abundantly clear that the mayor's office is actually a go-between the administrative that's the policy-making mechanism, council, and the management, staff that act on those policies, operational. Like the Local Government Service Commission or the Local Government Commission as is popularly known, it is an offense to have any person or authority improperly influence the decisions or interfere with the working of the council. The council is the elected representative of all the residents of the municipality of Madi. Not just a partisan bloc of residents, especially not a partisan bloc of the electorate from its 4 constituencies. Saturday, that's 2 Saturdays ago, provided the epiphany of the dirty partisan political politics that total disregard for the system of local government enshrined in our country's constitution. The event highlighted the PPP partisan policies when it comes to household cash grant distribution. 1, there was no public announcement of the people to the people of Madi through its council, nor any publicly acceptable meeting of these disbursements. 2, persons had to endure hours of heat listening to the Vice President's drone. As the Vice President droned on with his tired diatribe just because they needed to have the cash grant. 3, there was established a compiled list, not produced by the municipal council, as was done in the Amerindian villages, but by the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, reportedly through the Community Support Officers, or CSO, under which the ministry they fall. Madi, a predominantly Afrocentric municipality, has over many decades dedicated their lives to the extraction of gold and diamond. It is a mining township. This political imposition by Minister Pauline Sakai into the matters of the council is nothing but an attempt to emasculate the authority of the duly elected council, making it a sham and reducing the office of the mayor to that of a nursery school child. Monies intended, supposedly, per household at $100,000 ended up, in several instances, being given to 6 and 7 persons in large households and 2 and 3 persons in smaller ones, as long as they were friends, families, and favorites of the PPP. We've seen foreigners, Brazilians and Venezuelans, collecting cash. And most of those persons who were from the popular nightclubs owned by the PPP executives and businessmen, they were recipients of the cash grant. None of them electors of the local list, from the local list of electors. The enormity of this matter was that although persons within the municipality were unaware of the disbursement and only became so on the brink of the movement, persons filled buses that arrived from Georgetown to collect monies. Many persons, legitimate heads of households from the local list of electors, were greeted with, "Sorry, you're not on the list." After spending hours of standing in the sun waiting for their turn to collect the cash grant. A classic example is yours truly. I'm a municipal councillor for the township of Madi. The staff at the desk for verification told me after 2+ hours in lining up, "Sorry sir, your name is not on the list. Please see the mayor for clarification." The minister within the Ministry of Local Government personally told me, "There's only 1,000 persons we catered for." I don't know what that meant. Meanwhile, matters at the council have deteriorated to the extent of mediocre. Solid waste management and public health are reduced to a hustle by PVP cronies and friends, families and favorites. Pick and choose who they take and who will do what. Decisions taken by the council have always been unanimous at meetings, except in July when a popular nightclub based less than 70 feet from the Maggie District Hospital, requested the council's permission to block off the main access road to hold an annual dance hall sport. That entailed setting up a wall of speakers and playing extremely loud music until the wee hours of the morning. Obviously, oblivious to the laws and needs of the patient in the hospital and that of emergency. In objecting, citing the aforementioned, the council was informed that the police had already given permission, and so had the regional health officer. With the one dissension notice, the approval was given and the laws thus was violated. It is matters such as these and several others, even more glaring, that has placed the council in disrepute and has thus became a spectacle of amusement to the PPP and to the community at large. To control the PPP, to control the council, the PPP is trying to second a known PPP activist and supporter in the person of the Deputy Regional Executive Officer attached to the RDC Region 8 to carry out the functions of the town clerk. However, it must be noted that despite the fact that the council, at its statutory meeting held in August, moved and unanimously passed a motion to appoint the accounts clerk too as the deputy town clerk. Now, the town clerk and the municipal treasurer have left the job. It must be noted that since April 11, 2022, the life of the Local Government Commission came to an end, and His Excellency the President has deemed it not important enough and or necessary to establish the Commission in light of the 10 municipalities, 65 neighborhood democratic councils, and 75 Amerindian village councils existing across Guyana. Noteworthy also is the fact that the Secretary of the Commission is not authorized and thus cannot carry out the functions of the Commission in his absence. It must be noted that the Secretary of the Commission sometimes writes to the municipalities and NDCs giving instructions. The Secretary has no authority under the law to so do. Herein ends the live end of the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel Fraser. Let me apologize to Mr. Fraser for the typo there in his name. It is actually Daniel Fraser, so apologies and thank you. We are now joined by Ms. Laura George, so I will go to Ms. George for her statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Good afternoon to everyone. So I will speak to the absence of internet in indigenous communities, especially in the primary and the secondary schools. So Guyana is a signatory to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We know it as the UNDRIP or UNDRIP. So Article 21 states that indigenous peoples have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including in the areas of education, employment, vocational training and retraining, housing, sanitation, health and social security. And part 2 of that Article 21 says that states, which is Guyana, shall take effective measures and where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. Particular attention shall be paid to the rights and special needs of indigenous elders, women, youth, children, and persons with disabilities. Guyana as well is signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And it says, children have the right to get information from the internet, radio, television, newspapers, books, and other sources. adults should make sure the information they are getting is not harmful. Governments should encourage the media to share information from lots of different sources in languages that all children can understand. As a signatory to the declaration, we see that Guyana severely lags on the implementation of these rights outlined, especially as it relates to the right to the improvement of education and access to quality education in hinterland communities. The government of Guyana's information says that there are 242 indigenous villages or communities. Now, we wonder, or we should question, how many primary schools in these 242 villages might be without internet access. We call on the government of Guyana by way of the Ministry of Education to make public information on how many primary schools and secondary schools have internet services with proper bandwidth services as well. Access to information to support learning is critical to our children. We call on the government of Guyana and the Ministry of Education to create a task force immediately to organize and implement the establishment of proper internet services in all hinterland schools, parallel to supporting schools in the towns and the coast, meaning stop treating our children as a later or last to be served. Our children deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following the Alliance for Change on Facebook, you would be aware that the Alliance for Change had a team in Region 9. I think they spent about 3 days there. Ms. George was part of that team. So too, Chairman Patterson. The team was headed by Mr. Nigel Hughes, the leader of the Alliance for Change, and I will now hand over to him for him to bring share his experiences and observations of conditions in Region 9. Nigel?
Good afternoon, members of the press. Thank you very much for waiting. I want to start off by talking about a crisis that is evident in Region 9 in terms of education. The results for CSEC for Region 9 indicate that 5.66, an average of 5.66% passed CSEC for the region. I'll just briefly give you these figures, and I'm sure the ministry can challenge them if they wish, but they're the ministry's figures. St. Ignatius School, St. Ignatius Secondary at CSEC, 8%. Anai Secondary, 7%. Sand Creek Secondary, 6%. Ishalton Secondary, 8%. Karasabai Secondary, 2%. And Kotoka Secondary, 3%. That means that 94% of the students who attended secondary school for the last 5 years in those schools that I've just identified have failed CSEC. That is a crisis. It means that all those students who, I'm not sure they'll graduate, who leave secondary school in Region 9, after having spent 5 years, will have absolutely no certification. Now, this is a national crisis. It's not a political crisis. It's a national crisis. Because we cannot have any part of this country be subject to a fail rate of 90% after secondary school, after spending 5 years. The crisis is compounded by the fact that there are no plans for vocational training for these 95% of students who have just finished 5 years in secondary school without any qualifications. Now, the figures that we have, I believe, are the ministry's figures. And given that this crisis is so severe in Region 9, we would like to request and demand that the Minister of Education or the Ministry of Education releases all the CSEC results for all the regions in the country. because we cannot possibly have an average pass rate of 5.66% or 6% in a secondary school. It means that for the 5 years that have been spent there, there has been a complete failure of the delivery of quality education. And this brings me to another discussion, the difference between output and outcome. Every day we are regaled in the newspaper and various media that the government is spending more and more money on the construction of school buildings. That's an output. The outcome in Region 9 that we have proof of is that despite whatever they have constructed, the delivery of education and the outcome, which is 5.6% pass rate, is clearly completely disproportionate to and has no relation to the amount of money that's spent on buildings. Region 9 is an indigenous area, and therefore it is a matter of crisis, and I'm going to come on to another subject shortly, that further compounds the way in which the indigenous have been treated by the state. The percentage passes for the 2 years before that were 14% in 2022 for Region 9 and 19% in 2023. There must be some reason for that drastic decline to 5.66. And if this is not a national crisis, then I'm not sure what would be. The Alliance for Change, first of all, wants to propose that there clearly is an immediate, in-depth analysis of the reasons why we have failed the students in Region 9 after 5 years or during the 5 years. That analysis should not take more than 6 weeks. And immediately thereafter, we would like to recommend that there be an implementation of recommendations that have taken from the region, from the entire country, national recommendations for education in Region 9. You may recall that the Alliance for Change, at its conference, indicated that there were 5 key areas that we should have 10 to 15-year plans for, and education was the first, because education is perhaps the most important aspect of development for this country for the next 15 years. If that was not sufficient, you may recall about 4 weeks ago, the Minister of Education said she was going to conduct, or caused the ministry to conduct, a survey of pit latrines after we had raised this issue, particularly in relation to Philippi. We understand that that study is completed, and we understand that the results of that indicate that there are 77 schools which have pit latrines, 77 schools that have pit latrines. When you get over that, you can pass that by. When you get over that, all of the schools that have pit latrines are in indigenous areas, every single one of them. And they are in excess of 5,000 students who are attending schools which only have pit latrines. I don't wish to be alarmist, but this perhaps is the most clear evidence of discriminatory systems in relation to the indigenous people. Not only are they failing at the rate of 95% in Region 9, but they appear to be the only students who attend facilities, educational facilities, where there are pit latrines. This is a report, and I would just ask the Minister if she would be kind enough to release the report. I think it is entitled Ministry of Education, Information and Sanitary Facilities, brackets, latrine. The nation needs to sit down as a nation, not as our various political factions, not as our ethnic factions, and acknowledge that this is an awful, awful form of discrimination that is being perpetuated against our First Peoples. We then have to declare that that is a crisis, and we allocate the resources to immediately replace all the pit latrines in those 77 schools, all of which are in indigenous areas, with freshwater flushing toilets. We cannot in 2024 have this level of unofficial mistreatment and different treatment and secondary treatment, consequently creating persons who are relegated to second-class citizenship. We believe it's a matter of national importance, and the Alliance for Change is willing to participate not only in a national discussion, but in all national efforts that should be undertaken immediately to redress this very, very awful imbalance. We urge the Minister of Education to release the figures of her survey. This is not for the purposes of making political points. We wish to score none. What we wish to do is address this awful situation of less than equal treatment to our brothers and sisters in the indigenous community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now open the floor for questions. We ask that you identify yourself, the media agency that you represent.
Good afternoon, Nanny Paris for the Guyana Chronicle. Can you confirm whether the AFC vote to the City Council seeking a reduction in rates and taxes? Also, can you say the party's arrears, what is the party's arrears and how much?
Which parties are those? The AFC?
Taxes, rates and taxes.
I leave that to Mr. Patterson. I think he's got more institutional knowledge in that than I do.
The first part. Well, if we've wrote to, no,
Sorry.
yes. I think we're getting an echo there.
Okay, we'll turn that down. I'll take it back.
Yes. Sorry about that. Sorry, we were getting a feedback. Sorry, the party did not write to the City Council. I'm asking for a waiver. And secondly, I'm not aware of any arrears that we have, but obviously we were until I came back. So is that the extent of?
I have one more question. Is the party holding on to the claim that it won the 2020 elections? And are you still of the belief that the PDP government was installed by the ABC countries?
The question is, there was a disputed election. There's a question, there's a recount, and obviously, and there's a government. The PPP are in government, and by dint of us taking up the opposition, we acknowledge it out that we are in the opposition. So I don't see any claim. By taking up our seats in the opposition, we acknowledge we are in the opposition.
Hello?
Please go right ahead.
Yeah, Cordell Jones, Livewire News. My question is to Ms. Laura George. You spoke about declaration being signed. You're sitting on the panel here for the AFC, and you spoke about certain indigenous villages not having access to internet. The former telecommunications minister comes from this party. Have you been able to inquire from her why during her tenure she was not able to implement this internet service that you're talking about to bring the hinterland on par with the coastline?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Jones. Yes, we have had discussions. A look back at what they were able to do during the coalition time. They were able to establish internet services in, I think, over 200 areas. I mean areas in terms of some schools, some health centers, and other public offices in the villages. And so that was from 2015 to 2018 or 2019 until the parliamentary motion, the no confidence motion was passed. So in relation to from since then to now, and that this is why, because our country is evolving, our children write examinations every year, so it is important and it was urgent for internet services a lot more internet services to go into to be established in our primary, secondary schools to support learning. I'm sure you were listening earlier to the statistics that are out there in terms of, for example, in Region 9, why is it that our children now are coming out with these reports when they should be really at the helm of going into either further careers, further learning, but it is urgent, it is lacking there where it is. So yes, we have those discussions. We take stock of learned experiences, and we also embrace what is important in going forward for the nation's children, and especially where indigenous children are concerned. So yes, we've had those discussions.
Allow me to also, Laura, thank you for the question. As Laura mentioned, we did over 200 free Wi-Fi hotspots were established in various villages and communities around the country. But what is of concern to us, and this came out quite accurately over our tour to Region 9, that the government is deliberately taking away internet services from any village which they don't deem supportive. We were in Sarama, and I could say this here because the villages at our public, they took away the free Wi-Fi. They did the same thing in Toka and several other villages that they deem that the opposition has a majority, good standings in. So not only, and then secondly, why did the government cease or expansion of this program? Purely because obviously they would like these communities to not have access to information. And you can see we started a program, and we started, there was a program started, and it was discontinued. And wherever it is, in places like Philippi and those places like that, we've not been, they've taken away the equipment just because they would like to keep our indigenous colleagues in the regions without access to information.
Mr. Patterson, just let me follow up on your statement. The National Tushao Council was just concluded, and there was no report from any Tushao village leader, CDC leader, or member of government Wi-Fi being taken from the community. Does the AFC have evidence of this? And also, I think it was Ms. Alert spoke about distribution in Madia. Oh no, Mr. Fraser, sorry. About a distribution in Madia and persons being selected and picked out. Does the AFC have any substantial evidence to back up these claims that they're making?
Yes.
Video evidence, photo evidence, introduced with anybody to corroborate?
Yes, of course, we are a responsible party. Obviously, you ask the question, you open the door, and we walk through it, and so you can't back out now and ask things. We were there, I was there. It is a fact, and you can actually go to Sarama yourself, or you can go to Toka yourself if you so include. And secondly, one of the issues that the National Tushao Council, as you know, that the Tushaos have always complained quietly and silently that it's a managed affair. It is a managed affair where they cannot speak openly. And that's why we're doing these listening and groundings. I know you follow our page very, very closely. So you could obviously know that we were there. And so, yes. And I encourage you to keep following our page, Mr. Jones. Thank you.
My final question for Mr. Hughes, sorry. Mr. Hughes, you spoke about the pass rate in the outlying regions. Could you make us aware of the pass rate for the same region 2015 to 2020? What were the pass rates then?
Well, you see, if all of us subscribe to the freedom of information, and if the government was willing to release this information, we wouldn't have to go to the extent to which we go to get the information. That is why we're asking. If you, sir, if you allow me, please, you've asked me, and I'm indicating to you. I'm indicating to you that this information wasn't even released by the Ministry in Guyana of Education in relation to the information for the pass rates for those years. I'm sure we can get them, and by the next press conference we can release them. We are in favor of having a full and frank discussion. We're not here to score political points. At the end of the day, however you cut it, the dice is 6% failure. It's the worst result ever in Region 9. And that must be a crisis. But yes, of course, we're more than willing to look at the pass rates during 2015 to 2020.
Davina? Davina?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hi, this is Davina with Culture News. Just two quick questions from me. First of all, Exxon has said it will sell its assets to take care of oil spill costs. Maybe this is for Mr. Patterson. I'm not sure. Is Dr. Adams also online?
Not today, sorry, dear.
Okay. So the company's financials indicate that over 50% of its assets are production wells, which are thousands of feet below the water surface. My question is, can those be sold for the company to take care of its liabilities? And given that Guyana is paying for those assets through the cost recovery mechanism outlined in the PSA, won't Guyana be paying itself basically for a spill under those conditions?
Thank you very much, Davina, and good afternoon. Welcome again. Welcome to you. First and foremost, this has always been our concern about the liability payments and insurance clauses. We've always maintained that Exxon does not have substantial liabilities that we can levy on. I mean, we've also always maintained that we'll be selling or buying property which we own already through cross recoveries. And that's why we've always said that we want their parent company, Exxon USA, the Exxon, the mother company, the parent company that is registered, to sign and be collaborated, right, with us for in the event of an oil spill. We cannot, and we've always objected to Exxon Guyana being the sole company to bear the liabilities.
Just one final question. It was also reported that government secretly made changes to the Liza 1, Liza 2, and Payara permits to include a new oil spill provision which forces citizens to go to court for compensation. My question to you is that legal? Like, can they make changes to the permits granted to Exxon without the public's knowledge?
My short response to that: this is the PPP. I don't think anybody should ever be surprised at what the PPP does. Davina and the world knows that the PPP has gone to Parliament, the highest legislative body, and committed to provide us with copies of all of these agreements, provide us with copies of all the agreements they would have signed since they got in office in the oil and gas. We have written, I think the clerk of the National Assembly has written to the Prime Minister as well as the Minister of Natural Resources. And we've brought this up on numerous occasions in Parliament, and the answer is yes, we commit and we promise to make the information available, and to date they haven't. So this is the PPP. Their respect for the rule of law is extremely thin, particularly when it comes to the oil and gas sector.
Are you saying that it's illegal for them to make those changes, or I'm not sure
I wouldn't. Well, I wouldn't venture to say it's illegal. I would more say it's immoral, right? I mean, obviously, the law permits the minister responsible for petroleum production to enter into agreements, but it's very immoral that they would do that without informing the country, without informing the National Assembly, and they continue. While we were in government, Davina, you could remember they claimed that we were hiding documents and those things like that. They're doing even worse. We've asked them for the gas sales agreement for the gas ashore. They haven't provided it. We've asked them for what other agreements they signed with the Wales gas ashore. They never provided it. We've asked them for the details on the oil sales agreement that they would have entered into. They have not provided it. We've asked them for the contracts for they signed with the American company to build the gas plants. They've not provided it. They have not provided any information, and I think the news knew that the only information we get is the weekly diatribe from the vice president, which is very, very remotely related to the truth, but he continues every week. It's quite immoral, in our opinion.
But is the AFC concerned about that specific provision that has been included in the permit? Because
Davina, in short,
do we have the resources, our people, do we have the resources to come up against a multinational corporation for compensation from a spill? Because we've seen how they've fought against citizens even in the US to offer them compensation from a spill. So do we have the resources here to sort of challenge them in the courts for that?
Well, it would always be difficult, and we have said the easiest way is to make it very clear and transparent, in that long there is a spill, the costs be monitored, and then whoever and the parent company covers it. We would hope that a big company like Exxon would not have the citizens of Guyana resort to the courts to get a resolution for an oil spill, and these are one of the things which we will insist on. The question of resolution of oil spills and insurance and those things like that, should we be back in office.
We have a question from Adam Harris.
Yes, a very good afternoon. This question is for Mr. Daniel Fraser. Is he still there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Mr. Fraser, you were talking about the distribution of the cash grants. How is the list prepared? For example, I suppose you would have had a list of all the residents in the community, and then you said Brazilians and Venezuelans collected this. Are they registered as members of the community or communities to collect these cash grants, sir?
Adam, thank you very much for that question. That's a question that we have been pondering for the longest while. First of all, the list, the compilation of the list had nothing to do with the municipality. As I said, our understanding is that the CSOs who worked directly with the Minister of Agrarian Affairs, they were tasked with compiling that list. Our understanding also is that that list from the minister was sent to the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development for confirmation, and the ministry confirmed that list. Our subsequent information is that the list was the minister then sent out for CSOs again, who by that time started including other persons on the list to submit to the ministry. Now, the thing is that on our list of electors here in Region 8, in Madhya, we had local government elections only last year. And the persons who were eligible for as electors were on that list. Most of those persons, well, I can't say most, but a lot of those persons were not recipients of the cash grant. As I said before, I am a councillor here, and my name was not on the list. With the distribution that was going on, we had, a lot of us stood up and saw a lot of strange things happening, and there was nothing that we could do.
Thank
Adam, I don't know if I can add to that. Mr. Patterson and I were part of a team that went to Lethem, Central Rupununi, and then we went over to Bonfim, where we met some Guyanese about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And they said that the cash grant was actually distributed in Bonfim to persons who they claimed to be Guyanese. And clearly, what actually happened there, this is what they reported to us, that they brought over the cash, they changed it into reals at an exorbitant rate, and then distributed it to people who they said were Guyanese. So it is clear that there's no system for the cash grant. It is clearly being horrendously abused, and this is what we got from several persons, several Guyanese that we met in Bonfim, some of whom were actually Brazilian, who said they also received some of the proceeds of the cash grant. So it is clear that the system is problematic, and that's one of the reasons we think there should be legislation that governs it.
And can you allow me to?
Yes, please.
Adam, I'm glad you raised it, and as Nigel, the question of foreigners and elections. And one of the benefits of our listening and grounding experiences is we get first-hand information. And I can tell you that about, 6 weeks ago, we were in Region 3 with the Lenora, I think it's the last, right? And Perica. And I do think it was at the Lenora's outreach. We had a chance to go into the GCOM's office at the outreach, and it was reported. And because when we visited, we saw persons of obviously foreigners going into GCOM's office, and when we went in there, we were advised that at least 30 to 40 Venezuelans are being registered in Region 3 every single month. The persons in GCOM, of course, when you questioned on what basis they are registering the person, they said, the GCOM officials said they had no, no authority not to register them, because these individuals go to the Guyana GRO's office and they're given, I can't remember, I think it was the form F3, I think it is, I can confirm the form, which says, called a GRO office, they translate their documents and they issue them with this form, and the GCOM official said with this form they're now eligible to register. So the question, and that is a verifiable issue, the question of foreigners coming on our list is a real and live issue. So I have no doubt in Madhya some of these persons may have actually entered onto our electoral list as well.
Any other questions?
Yes, just one quick one. And this has to do with the pit latrines. Of course, when the issue for surface, I saw a comment which said that the coalition was in power, why they didn't fix it in the 3 or 4 years, however long they've been there. Now, the frightening figure, 77 schools, all in Amerindian communities, have pit latrines. Could you say whether any of these schools ever had the kind of water toilets that exist almost all around the country, sir?
From the figures that we have from the ministry's report, I think some of those schools, in addition to the pit latrines, have flush toilets, and in the case of Makushi, even those pit latrines are not working. And a lot of this can be addressed once the ministry releases this officially. But some of those have pit latrines and flush facilities. And I can give you an example. When we were in Philippi, that's when Laura, David, and I were in Philippi, you had pit latrines for the nursery and primary, and they had water closets, toilets for the staff. So the staff were getting toilets. They didn't have running water then, but I anticipate at some stage there would be running water in it. And the staff had, I think there were three cubicles with toilets, but those were only for the staff. the pit latrines were for the students. And these are nursery and primary. And I rather suspect in those areas where they have both pit latrines and running water flush toilets, there may be a similar arrangement.
If I may add here, Adam, it is grossly unfair to compare 2015, 2019 with 2020, 2024 period. It is unfair to compare a non-oil economy with an oil-producing economy. What you can do in an oil-producing economy where GDP is growing by double digits, 30%, 35%, 40%, you cannot compare with an economy that was not seeing that growth. Our position is, as the economy grows, invest in a better quality of life for the people. Do not discriminate. It is that simple. Do not put the money into the people that already have money. Do not enrich those who are already rich. Let us bridge the divide. And so let us invest in those hinterland communities where the children have to use pit latrines. Let us invest in riverine communities. Let us bridge that divide between the haves and the have-nots. Don't compare apples and oranges. Don't compare what the coalition government was able to do without oil as to what this PPP government should be doing with this growth in the economy. Thank you.
I just want to add, if I could, and Beverly, thank you very much for that. What I'd like to add is this. This is a sovereign nation moving forward, and it can't be the basis for no progress to say that during some period they didn't have it. So assuming that you didn't have something between 2015 and 2020, what has that got to do with our failure to do it in 2024 as a country? It is a mind-boggling argument that somehow the excuse is, well, it's not being done because it wasn't done before. I think the citizens of this country deserve much better a response. And if we are moving forward, and if we do say that we're going to become a modern democratic society in which we're all going to participate equally, or at least have equal opportunity, we can't be comparing 2015 to 2019. And if one wants to go the route of comparison, in the 32 years between 1992 and today, the People's Progressive Party has been in office for 27 of those years. So if you want to make a comparison, you're making a comparison between somebody who has had an opportunity to govern this country exclusively for 27 years and somebody who's only had the opportunity to govern it for 3. It's not even 5, because when the no confidence motion came, the government was restricted to only carrying out its basic functions of running the government. It couldn't make any investment decisions. It couldn't make any change in policy, because in the 2 years post-December 2018, it was restricted. So that makes it even worse. You're comparing 27 years, which is 9 times the 3 effective years that the coalition had to make the change. And I think that's the context. But like I said, what one didn't do before can't be an excuse for why we're failing today.
Thank you, Nigel Hughes. Any other questions?
Yes, before Dennis gets in.
You don't even know if Dennis is here.
Yeah, I can see it with his hand. Mr. Hughes, this has nothing to do with the press statement. I noticed that you were among a team of lawyers representing the family of Ms. Melissa Atwell. Mm-hmm. What are the conditions for your representation? How much is paid or pro bono, and what has prompted you to be involved?
In normal circumstances, Adam, the arrangements between my clients and I are not released, but I will say it's a pro bono case. Other lawyers on that team actually contacted me and asked me if I'd be willing to lend a little bit of my experience, which I did. So it's a pro bono case. I mean, this is This is another act of egregious overreach and clearly an attempt to intimidate and silence a family of somebody who's very prominent in criticizing the government. I mean, if you want, I can go into it, but that would be my response. It's pro bono, and I'm not even the lead lawyer. I think there are other persons there who are leading this charge.
Dennis Chibral.
Just Mr. News, a follow-up on that question. Could you tell me procedurally what has to be done when the police comes to search a property? Do we have to say, well, I have a warrant? Do they show you the warrant? If not, if you don't show your warrant, then what next?
Okay, so there are a couple of scenarios. Let me deal with the easiest. If the police see somebody running out of a building, they've got a knife, the knife has blood, and they hear screaming in the house, they don't need a warrant in those circumstances to go into the house. Because at the end of the day, the premise upon which both warrants and warrantless searches is based is reasonable suspicion. So a man with a knife with blood is reasonable suspicion. In the Atwell case, before you approach, whether it's a magistrate or a justice of the peace for a warrant to search, you have to have reasonable suspicion. In this day and age, especially when you're investigating narcotics, you would have expected some level of surveillance of the property prior to applying for the warrant. So if the property has been under surveillance for 4 months, then they can say, look, there's a very unusual habit of people, a large number of people going into the building, spending 5 minutes, they appear to conduct some transaction and then leaving. So that may raise reasonable suspicion. Of some of the people that have left, we searched them and we have found narcotics on them. That creates reasonable suspicion. Unfortunately, the practice of the police, and it's been indulged quite often, is that they just go before the JP and they say we have reasonable suspicion. They don't have a basis for it, and then they obtain the warrant. So technically, once they close with the warrant, they can enter your home. But people don't challenge this, which I would like to invite them to, because if you challenged it and they had no basis for the reasonable suspicion, you have a basis to set aside the warrant. In the Roxanne Myers case, where we got judgment against the state, they said they were looking for her for, I don't know, 2 months. They couldn't find her. She was going to work every day. When she got arrested, I can't remember what it was, something ridiculous, perverting the course of justice. And they had no reasonable suspicion. And of course, they locked her up for 3 days. And during the course of the cross-examination of their witnesses, it became evident that what they recorded in their books as the basis for her arrest was completely different for what they said was the basis of the arrest and what they questioned her on. Now, Ms. Myers was one of those persons that was possessed of the fortitude to challenge. 99% of the people don't challenge. They take it as is. But the only way you're going to remove this abuse is if you go to court and you get damages. I have to say that I'm not sure that even with this administration, that even when you have a judgment against them, that they obey it. Because recently we obtained a judgment from the Chief Justice that says that communications between lawyer and client cannot be video recorded. And every time I go to the police headquarters, every time I speak with a client at police headquarters, long after the judgment, I'm video recorded. I bring it to their attention. I say, look, we have a judgment from Chief Justice George. You're not entitled to do this. And it doesn't change their conduct. I just hope that people realize the kind of country we're living in.
What I want to get to you this news is when the police obtain the warrant, what is the procedure? Do they show the warrant? Do you have to sign something? Do you have to read it? And
No.
Secondly, my substantive question is, what weight are you placing on the hinterland communities in terms of a minimum creating a minority government or defeating the PPP in its entirety?
Dennis, I apologize. I didn't hear your second question. I can certainly answer the first one, but it kind of got muffled, and I think everybody here wasn't sure, so I can't even get assistance from anybody in the room. So, yeah.
Can I offer you some assistance then? I'm asking, what weight are you placing rather on the hinterland communities in either creating a minority government or defeating the PPP altogether?
Okay, so let me deal with your first question first. If the police obtain the warrant, you're entitled to see the warrant. They may not want to hand it to you because of course a person may take it and tear it up. But you're certainly entitled to see the warrant and see what the contents of the warrant are. That you're entitled to. You don't have to sign anything. It's not required that you sign anything. Recently, part of the standard operating procedures of the police require them to carry body cameras. In the case of Melissa Atwell's mother, there were no body cameras. That raises a suspicion. If your operating procedures say you should have a body camera and you don't take it, it means obviously you don't intend to have whatever you do recorded. But yes, you're entitled to read it. You must be entitled to read it. If they don't show it to you, I know people will say, well, do you stop the police from coming into your premises? That's a difficult question for this reason. There's a practical consequence to that, which has nothing to do with the law. If you attempt to stop the police from doing anything in Guyana, you put yourself at bodily risk. And the chances of any sort of redress, if you live, are probably remote. So it wouldn't be a course of action that I would recommend. The police are not unknown for abusing their authority. If they don't have a warrant, unless they have reasonable suspicion, and again, all of this you can only establish post facto. So to protect your body, try and be as, I wouldn't say cooperative, but try and not be obstructive. Now, in relation to your second question and minority government, unfortunately, and the hinterland community, sorry, the Alliance for Change is a political entity, as far as I know, has never aimed for second best. It may end up with second best, but it's never aimed for second best. So we're not aiming for a minority government. We believe that this is a different dispensation in Guyana, and we believe we have as equal an opportunity as anybody else at the end of the campaign of forming a government. Whether we do that alone, whether we do that in some other combination, we believe we can do that. So the concentration on the hinterland community, and forgive me perhaps for sounding less than polite, is we're not concentrating on the hinterland community because we want to create a minority government. We're concentrating on the hinterland community because they're so badly treated. They're citizens of the country, and they are entitled to make an informed decision on their political future. In attempting to do that, we are bringing raw information to them. I don't think the Ministry of Education shared, for example, with the National Two Shows Council, how badly Region 9 had done in the CSEC. Because if the two shows of Region 9, particularly Region 9, knew that 95% of their students, their constituents, were failing after attending school for 5 years. You know, to go to school for 5 years, the expense, the difficulty, the getting up in the morning, and you have nothing, zero. If they had that, as responsible leaders, I imagine that they would have said to the Minister of Education, what on earth is going on here? Secondly, it's not just that these students after 5 years have nothing. There's no plan to give them any vocational training. So it's not as if, okay, you've spent 5 years, you didn't qualify academically, we are taking you into some sort of technical college, you're going to get trained as an electrician, you're going to you get trained as a carpenter, a block maker, that gives them a second chance to be able either to be employed or to set up their own business so they can start building houses to international standards and not those that are traditionally accustomed to. Imagine in the coast, imagine if you had a demographic, an ethnic demographic, where the pass rate was 6%, and they didn't release that information. Just think of what the reaction would be. And just think about what Guyana's reputation must be like internationally when people realize that we have the indigenous community, their pass rate in their largest region, Region 9, is 6%, and then 72 of their schools, compared to any other ethnic group, have only pit latrines. And you're trying to make this sound as if this is just some sort of minor inconvenience. This, if you took the figures from pre-1992 in South Africa and compared the living conditions of the people in Soweto, which was a zinc shanty town with pit latrines, and you wanted to compare that to Pretoria or Cape Town or even Durban, even Sandton in Durban, you would find a similar situation. You'd find most of the schools, if not all of the schools in Soweto, having pit latrines, and all the schools in Pretoria, all the schools in Cape Town, all the schools in Sandton in Johannesburg had the best facilities. You don't need a law for that. It speaks for itself. And all I'm saying here is I'm not pointing fingers at the Minister of Education. I am saying Guyana has a real crisis. What does that do to our international reputation? This is the home of the non-aligned movement. This is the home of a country that allowed Cuban aircraft to land here when it was going to Southwest Africa to fight apartheid. How could we end up with those statistics in 2024? Voluntarily. You don't need a law. The policies have put you there. And that's why that's why we're in that area, because we don't believe the indigenous people should be in this position, whether or not we win an election, whether or not they reduce the minority. This is unacceptable.
And on that note,
quickly, Mr. Hughes, I'm sure
very quickly.
One, categorically, is American, is not American, the indigenous community was critical for you to win the election. And two, did Ms. Atwell et al. Tell me whether the degree they were shown or they saw circular?
I didn't hear the second part, but I can certainly answer the first part.
Did Ms. Atwell et al. Tell you that whether the search warrant was shown to them or they read a search warrant?
Let me just deal with your first question, because I really want to dispel this suggestion that some part of the community is more important than another part for an alliance victory. Every single citizen, every single ethnicity, every single class, every single person, whether abled or challenged, all of them, they're all important to us. As you know, you probably know, I can't say that you know, yesterday and the day before, the female vendors from Water Street who had been dislodged and told that they can't sell, they came. We went out immediately to assist them. We didn't go out for political mileage, and I made that very clear in my engagement with the mayor. I went out because these are single women who now have no livelihood, who have children, who either have Boxan and other commitments that are going to be out of bread. So it's not a case that they're less important than somebody else or the indigenous are more important. I think perhaps for too long we have had elections that have had ethnic considerations, and people believe that that is the only way in which you approach an election. Our approach is that everybody is priority.
On the Atwell.
Oh, on the Atwell situation, if I have not personally spoken to Melissa Atwell's mother, so I can't say to you firsthand what she said. I certainly have received instructions in relation to the search warrant, and as you know, as a question of privilege, I am always reluctant to release information which clients have provided me with, unless, of course, they say it's okay. But I've not spoken to either Ms. Atwell's mother or her aunt who is there. I'm certainly aware of what she says. I don't think anything she says has been contradicted by her public statements. So that's as far as I would go ahead. If she says to me, go ahead and say whatever she said to me, I'm more than willing to do that.
Ladies and gentlemen of the media, that's all the time we have. I want to thank you again for your attention. Thank you for joining us, and let me thank again Ms. Laura George, David Patterson, Daniel Fraser, and Nigel Hughes. Thank you.